I went to see the new Superman film this past Friday, and long story short, it was a great film. Let's talk about it. Now, before I get into my review, I will let anyone who hasn't seen the film yet know that this review will possibly go into some spoilery territory, so if you don't want the film spoiled for you, now is your chance to click out the video before we get into the review, and you can come back later to it. So, straight off the bat, this is a film that I absolutely loved. I've been kind of thinking about ever since. I am planning to go back to it at some point. Um, what I love about James Gunn's films, his comic book films specifically, is that James Gunn as a director, his films feel the most like comic books to me. Um, and the way that he makes his films, I find sometimes with comic book films, there's a tendency sometimes to lean away from the actual comic book side of things. And I think James Gunn does a good job at leaning into the comic book side of things, which in my mind just makes this movie even more fantastic than it already could have been. Um, that being said, I love the fact that the film very much throws us into a pretty much established universe. The opening explained to us how, 300 years ago, the world was introduced to metahumans. 30 years ago, Clark Kent crashes to Earth as a baby. 3 years ago, he becomes Superman, and 3 minutes ago, Superman loses a battle for the first time. Uh, which, if anyone is a fan of comics, knows that quite often when you first read comics, you're just jumping into the middle of the story. Very few people go back all the way to 1938 to the beginning of their favorite character. Generally, it's you have to jump in and sort of work out what's going on along the way, which I think this movie does very well. Um, and I think the whole jumping in nature is something that the um, supporting cast of this film uh, works very well, um, because you have the Justice Gang, who are very much there to establish that this is a pre-established universe, that there is already superheroes running about, um, and you know they're there to establish um, the already existing universe, to establish kind of how different superheroes differ to Superman. Um, and I think they do both of those things very well. I love that Superman in this film, he very much embodies that, truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. You know, his whole thing is he sees the best in everyone, and he's willing to show kindness to everyone, no matter who that is, no matter how much the Justice Gang or Lex Luthor get on his nerves. Uh, he makes it his goal to show kindness, and that's very much what Superman is all about. Um, to a point where, in a conversation with Guy Gardner, Lewis Lane gives off about how trusting Clark is with his secret identity. Another great example of this is during the kaiju battle in the film. We see Superman as he's trying to not only save the city of Metropolis and the people of Metropolis, but also try and work out some way he could possibly save the kaiju as well. Um, well, meanwhile, you have the sort of Justice Gang who are a bit more brash about it, and they're just trying to save the city and destroy the kaiju. And after the battle, we get a better look at the sort of dynamic between, you know, the Justice Gang and Superman, and how like the Justice Gang, you see Guy Gardner landing, and he's, oh, don't worry, folks, I'm here to save the day, and you can see that the Justice Gang are very much doing it for the sort of fame and glory of being superheroes, where Superman is very much uh not doing it for that tease. You know, he's doing it out of the goodness for of his heart. Um he's sort of doing it for the people rather than for himself. Uh and the honor of doing it, which I like that sort of different side that dynamic, and you very much get to see how throughout the film that kind of mindset of Superman is very much having an effect on the characters around him, and you see with you when Mr. Terrific, he sort of changes his mind to help sort of Lewis find Clark. That you know Clark slash Superman's mentality is very much inspiring the people around him to be uh, better people in general. Which I think brings me into my next point, that this film, even though there is a lot of action in it, it's very much a sort of great character study, more so of Superman, and uh, it very much focuses on who Clark is, who Superman is, and what effect his mentality and his character has on the world around him. And we get to spend a lot of time with the supporting cast of like Lewis Lane, Mr. Terrific, the rest of the Justice Gang. You get to see the effect uh, Superman directly has on characters like Metamorpho, which I think is really cool. Uh, Considering that this film, the theme that they very much focus on kindness and hope, and that is shown in everything from the imagery to the way characters interact with each other to the soundtrack, to the way Superman acts, everything. Um, the cast of this film, I think James Gunn did an incredible job at casting this film. Um, every cast member of this film feels like, um, or every character in this film feels like they've sort of walked off the page of a comic book. Um, it was probably one of the things that excited me the most on the lead up to Superman. I never seen David Cornsweet and thinking, he'd make a wonderful Superman. Before he was even announced. Uh, Lewis Lane was brilliant, or sorry, Rachel Brosnahan as Lewis Lane was brilliant. Even the castings that I wasn't sure of initially, like I wasn't sure of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, or um, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, and I was thankfully proven wrong. Uh, you Nicholas Hoult really did a good job of portraying the hatred that Lex has over Superman to almost like Shakespearean tragedy to the character, and Nathan Fillion does a great job at playing like Guy is like the biggest jerk there is. I can definitely see him potentially getting knocked out by Batman in future projects. Um, I thought the chemistry of the Daily Planet cast was amazing. Um, it very much kind of like this sort of intricate machine, and there's sort of all these cogs working to keep this newspaper running. And I love this sort of sequence when they all pile into the T ship to go expose Lex's plan in the film, um, and all being sort of led by Perry. Um, Jimmy Olsen, um, I think the actor who played Jimmy Olsen, he was born for this role. He was very funny. I think the the Daily Planet in general cast was very funny. I can't wait to see more of them. I'd be interested, maybe even in a potential sort of like Daily Planet spin-off or Jimmy Olsen spin-off. I know a lot of weird stuff happens to Jimmy in the comics, so it'll be interesting to see um what they do with that going forward. Another thing I liked is the fact that we see a Superman who's very new at what he does, and you see him kind of struggle with that he the ideas of that he can't save everyone, or that sometimes he might lose a fight, um, or that or even the idea that perhaps not everyone is as kind as he is, but he can still fight for it. Um, I also like that we have a Superman who kind of he comes off as confident as the start, but as the film go on, you kind of realize that he doesn't quite have it all worked out as he thinks, and so I like to see that sort of progression. Um, Jumping into one of the few issues that I had with the film, um, I thought some of the pacing was a wee bit off in the second act, mostly, especially when Superman gets captured. Um, I thought some of that could be fixed, although that is very much an issue that sort of gets fixed pretty quickly, so I'm not too bothered by that. But yeah, overall, there's definitely parts of the movie that I felt emotional watching it, not because um of what was happening in the film, but just because of the great adaptation of the hope and kindness that Superman is made to represent, and he has that certain almost sort of Santa Claus-esque element to him of when he sort of knows by sort of like a little kid, and that's their kind of like knowing look to one another of like we sort of get each other, because Superman's very much a character that sort of kids like to look up to. Um, and there's just that kind of mystery element to him. There's kind of an air of mystery to him, um, that I think kids would really enjoy. Um, I love his interactions with Palma Kent. Um, but yeah, overall, I'm excited to see where this new DC universe goes. Hopefully, it's here to stay. Um, um, and I think, lastly, the thing that got me very excited in terms of being here to stay, spoilers, is the Supergirl cameo. Um, at the end of the film, I thought Millie Alcock did a great job of portraying Supergirl, um, and it makes me extra excited to see what they have in plans for the Supergirl film coming out next year. Especially as someone who read the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book that the film is supposedly based off of, and I absolutely loved that comic book. I thought it was such a great exploration of the character, and I'm excited to see what they do with that character. Um, the other thing that I'm just remembering to do with Krypton I wasn't too sure about them making Superman's Kryptonian parents evil. Um, I mean, it works for the plot of the film, but I'm curious around the decision of like that it's not like um it's the message wasn't sort of tampered with or something. Um, so I'm curious to see what they do with that. But overall, I thought it was a great film. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. 4.5 stars out of 5 in my review. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed the film. Uh, I look forward to potentially watching it again and to see what comes in the future. Um, be free to let me know what you guys thought of the film. Did you like it, or not? But anyway, that will wrap things up for this video. Um, thanks for watching and um, subscribe so you stay tuned for future videos.